are approved by the school committee, which is accurate. The personnel director agreed to strive to seek school committee approval in a more timely manner. I believe that that statement was made by the superintendent of schools. Okay?
I remember that.
That's correct.
Yes. So I would like that to be reflected. The superintendent was aware of that, and that we need to follow state law and school committee policy.
I'd like to withdraw my motion and make a new motion that in the first statement that Mr. Mudge is speaking of, that we identify Mary Ann Carroll as the speaker, and in the second statement, we identify Dr. Thornton as the speaker.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
And I make a motion that we approve the minutes, or number C, the minutes from February 8th, 2011.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Moving on. The ones on February 15th, was there any questions on February 15th?
No.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes of February 15th, 2011.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, passes. Okay. The next item is school committee action progress report. I don't believe that was exempted.
It was not.
I make a motion that we approve the school committee action report for March 8th, 2011.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Approval of bids and awards. I think we had a couple of people on that, Joe and Bill. Joe, would you like to start?
Did I leave her my minutes?
The staff development services, I wanted to bring that up and talk a little bit about it. It bothers me when we're looking at squeezing every penny that we're going out on a sole source bid and spending, I believe, $5,500 to ASCD, and on the sheet that was submitted along with that, it was checked in a block that said that this is the only person that can provide this service. And obviously that's not the case, because ASCD is a very large company. They pull these packages off the shelf, and the people that do them. And I'm sure that if this particular individual was not able to show up to do the job, that ASCD would be providing someone else to take their place. So I don't believe that the sole source justification was accurate. I also, it bothers me a little bit because I remember one of the first actions that I took, and I didn't really know what I was doing at the time, but we dropped out of Sirico, and I asked at that meeting, before I made my vote, I said, is this going to affect or impact our ability to do teacher training or in-service training? And I was answered to the effect that we would be taking care of that internally, that would be no problem dropping out of Sirico. And now I'm looking at a bill, a potential bill, or an obligation anyway, for $5,500 to do this. And I'm thinking that perhaps there might be some other way that we could do this using our own people internally, as was mentioned at that meeting. And that's all I need to say on that particular one. I don't know if, Bill, have you got something? Or excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to have that addressed by the superintendent. Dr. Thornton?
Yeah, I can start that and turn it over to Dr. Roget. What you're looking at is Title III money. It's ESL funding. It's federal money. It's spent for Title III activities. So as far as the remark of, in this day and age, spending that money, it's for teacher training for ESL. Anything over $5,000 comes to the school committee per the town ordinance. This is, I believe, $5,500, so it's in front of you. What I'm telling you is Rojas, the person in question, is a very, very particular trainer in ESL. The model in South Carolina, just so you know, with the CRP, if districts have less than $10,000, they kind of pool together and share their resources in their training. In this case, NK has been hovering under $10,000 for a couple of years now, so we're part of this consortium, if you will. I would contend it is sole source and unique design by the nature of Rojas and her training. It's her training program. It's not an ASCD cookie-cutter program. I guess my last response before I get to Dr. J would be, these are the kinds of things you hire us for, to get educational trainers to train the teachers. This is federal money. It's ESL. If you want to turn it down, you can, but that's the nature of teacher training. ESL, federal money. Dr. J, if you could help.
Yeah, I was involved in booking that with our ESL staff. This is Title III money. It is, and with Title III money, there are certain strings attached. You have to do certain kinds of training all around ESL. This particular kind of training that we've been encouraged to do for years, and we have done some of our own, this is another version of it, is meant for mainstream teachers to learn methods for working with students who have English as a second language. It is something required of this grant. We need to go through with this. And to address the concern about the funding and, the Sarico issue and being able to work with other districts, this is an example of that. We are working with other districts on this. We are inviting them at an expense to them. If they get involved with this, which they need to do too, we can, and we intend to charge them to be a part of this experience. And this is not just anyone off the shelf. This is someone who's nationally famous for the kind of work she does in training mainstream teachers to work with ESL students. So,
Thank you, Dr. O'Shea. Mrs. Abbott-Otto?
I just want to make a quick suggestion that Mrs. Brunel made to me on many an occasion, and that is if members have questions on consent agenda items, to try, and it isn't always possible, and it's not always possible for me to do it either, to get in touch with people the week before the meeting and ask those questions and have the information. And then if there's an objection, and there may well still be an objection to the information, then you can make it. But just to try and, speed along, because we have a long agenda and we're way behind, I think.
Mr. Mudge?
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate what Dr. J and Dr. Thorne have said, but I don't think that that's Mr. Thompson's point. And correct me if I'm wrong. I think what he's talking about is sole source contracting, regardless of where the money's coming from or who's paying it, okay? And to me, that's the issue. And in fact, we should not be issuing any contracts that are sole source until we make a review and analysis of that, which you apparently have, and I don't have a problem with that. But you ought to say that in your sole source statement to justify the sole source bid. So the school committee does see something in writing that we've gone through the effort and we think it's a sole source bid. I think that should be applicable to all sole source bids. We just don't throw something out and say it's sole source. We better justify a sole source bid.
Thank you, Mr. Mudge. Mrs. Benson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had the same comments, and I tried this afternoon, Ms. Aswano, to contact Mr. O.J., but we have a problem with people answering the phone and people being at their desks. So when you call the department, I'm not at my desk, so you can't leave everything on an answering machine. But then I happened to do a little research, and not on the computer, printed page, that this was the company that do work in English as a second language. So I was satisfied, but even though I tried, I couldn't get you, Mr. O.J.
Thank you, Mrs. Benson. Mrs. Page?
Well, I think the point is well taken about the sole source bid, but this does sound like an excellent program, so therefore I'll make a motion that we approve the staff development services, E1A and B.
Second?
Having made a motion and a second, any more discussion? Mrs.
I
Abbott-Otto?
just want to make a quick comment that I believe Dr. Thornton did explain the nature of the sole source bid, and I think that he had, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was paperwork filled out that it was a sole source bid because of the nature of the provider. Isn't that what you said?
It's B on your agenda.
Thank you.
1B.
Thank you.
I really don't think that just the statement itself satisfies the,
Okay.
it should be
I don't think it was
qualified.
necessary.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of staff development 1A and B?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
No?
Okay, passes, one negative. The next item is the smart boards. Mrs. Benson?
That I have a question on. The smart board, and it has been explained, and after reading about it and going through it, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
So are you making a motion to approve it, Mrs. Benson?
No, I'm not making a motion, I'm expressing a viewpoint.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the smart boards?
I'll make a motion to approve the smart boards.
Second?
Discussion, Mr. Thompson?
Discussion. I'd like to know what classes these boards are planning to go into. I understand there's 3 of them. And if anyone knows, could they tell me? That was the only question I had on that one. What,
Dr. Thornton, do you know?
what
If you want
class-
the actual classes, if you would email me in the morning, I can get you the actual locations. Whitford Middle is the location, but I can give you the rooms.
I understand it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Mudge.
are we procuring those for Davisville, Middleton?
I can speak to
Yes,
that.
Dr. Thornton.
In terms of smart boards, as you probably know, it's in our district plan to really increase capacity with smart boards. We started back, I want to say, 3 or 4 years ago. We had one in the district, Barbara Morse, who I believe is here tonight, had a smart board, and she got that through a grant of her own, if you will. From that, we were involved with what's called E2T2. That's a federal grant, and we got more smart boards. In the first year, it was open to the middle schools. DMS was very aggressive. I believe got 18 through applying and working hard. That same year, Whitford Middle wasn't as active. They only got 3. So they're kind of behind, if you will. This past year at the elementaries, past 2 years, we actually did a few more in the L's as well. They believe I have 1 or 2 per school. So it's really been a constant effort. Also, if memory serves, last year, we also got another round of smart boards through E2T2 funds for the elementary. So it's been a multi-year initiative. The high school now probably has an order of 25-ish or so. DMS around 18, 19. Whitford Middle was really behind with 3, so we're looking to get them up to speed with this.
Thank you, Dr. Thornton. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's approved 6-0. The next item is the Eller contract for the IT operations. This has been approved by the town council, their last meeting. So any questions regarding this from the floor? Yes, Mr. Mudge.
I'd like to defer this for a couple of weeks, Mr. Chairman. I had sent several emails for questions regarding the contract, which I support, by the way. But I have, I understand, I've been told that there's been some changes to the last contract that I guess the school department has provided that I haven't had an opportunity to look at. And as a representative to the consolidation committee, I would like an opportunity to study that more in depth. And also, I have a concern about the who's putting the contract out and who the contract manager will be. This is kind of a hybrid type of thing. Is it going to be the town manager? Is it going to be the superintendent of the schools? And I don't believe that issue is resolved yet, and I don't think we should go forward putting out a contract when we don't know who is going to be the contract representative who effectively will represent both the town and the school committee. So I would make a motion that we defer this for a couple of weeks so we can address those issues.
Mr. Mudge, to answer your questions, this contract has been reviewed by the town council. It has been reviewed by the town council's attorney. It has been reviewed by our attorney. The RFP was sent out by our department, and the changes in the end were clarifications as to items that One of the items in there was that we were going to be billed 240 hours at X number of dollars an hour to come up with a contract sum, which I personally objected to. I wanted also to make sure that the RFP was part of the contract, to make sure that there was no question as to what the contract called for and what the RFP called for, so that if they decided that they wanted to charge extra, they had to show where it was not included in the RFP. There was also a situation where they had to get prior approval to any increases, any change orders before they actually did the work and thought they were going to bill us for it. Those were the changes to the contract, Mr. Mudge.
Yeah,
As far as, excuse me,
Yep.
as far as who is managing the contract, that is the Consolidation Committee, which basically is Charlie Stam from the Town Council and myself from the School Committee. We are representing the town in the School Committee to make sure that the contractor does what is called for in the contract. Now, at this late date, I think that we need to move forward with this. It's been reviewed and reviewed and reviewed. If you have any questions as to any of the terms of the contract, I think our attorney can address those to you.
Mr. Chairman, I think that I was elected to represent the town on the Consolidation Committee back in December.
You haven't gone to any of the meetings, Mr. Mudge.
There's been one meeting, sir, that's it. And I've
You
asked for
didn't
several
go to
other.
it, did you?
And by the way, I've gone to the meetings that I've been apprised of, which is there one, okay, that I did not make because it was conflicted with another meeting as far as I'm concerned. Nonetheless, you say that you were self-appointed contract administrator for this. You haven't asked the school committee, okay, for their input on this. I have not been given changes that were made to this, okay, and I have documented all my questions since January, okay, and I was not afforded the courtesy of getting the final contract in its form so that I could look at this to fulfill my responsibilities as the school committee's representative to the Consolidation Committee. I think that, now, if you want to select somebody else, it's fine. But right now, I believe that I am the representative to the Consolidation Committee, and as such, I should have an opportunity to review this contract.
As a new member, all of this was set prior to the election. I have no problem with you being the committee representative on consolidation. But to go backwards to say that you weren't apprised of all of this took place prior to the election.
That's not true.
Dr. Thornton?
I just want clarification on your agenda. 3B is the updated ELERT proposal. 3B.
That's exactly my issue.
Mrs. Page?
Well, I'd like to move forward with this because I see this as we've been talking round and round about consolidating with the town, and until we get the assessment done of knowing what we need, we're not going to be able to move forward. So this contract allows us to get the assessment done. And then once we have that done, we can decide where we do want to, what services can be consolidated. So I look at this as being critical, that if we're to move ahead on this issue, we really need to have the assessment done, because that's what we've all been talking about, where are the areas we have in common. And so if we're going to find the common areas, we need to make sure that we have some sort of an assessment done. This has gone through a fair bidding process, so that would be why I would say I'd make the motion that we approve the ALERT contract agreement with IT operations.
Excuse me, there is a motion on the floor with no second.
Oh,
Is
okay.
there a second to?
I'll second that then.
Are you seconding Mr.
Oh,
Moses?
oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
Yeah, I just wanted to have 2 weeks so we could review this again and resolve the issues
That's a motion?
associated with that. I had made that motion.
I'll
yes.
second that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion on Mr. Mudge's motion?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
The reason that I'm interested in just postponing this a little bit is that I tried very valiantly to go through this contract looking for what I was looking for, and I did not find it. Now, maybe because of my electronic inexpertise and my preference for looking at a contract on paper, I didn't find it. But what I was looking for was to get from ELERT when they're through with this project, and we've paid the money for it, that we will have a full, complete wiring diagram of the personnel and the operation, the layout of the building, the equipment that's going to be in it, the position descriptions, the ways that those positions will be evaluated, all of that kind of thing, I wanted to have from this company if we were going to spend I think it was about a total of $40,000.
Yes,
And
22.
I'm not clear as to whether that's in there or not. But if they come back to us and we pay them the money, and then we have to go do our own evaluations, wiring diagrams, position descriptions, I think that's going to be a lot of extra work and probably a little bit messy, as it involves two different branches of the government here. So that's one of the reasons I want to look a little bit more on this thing.
Mr. Thompson, your questions could be answered in the RFP as to what is expected to be included in the contract, which I think for the most part is everything that you just talked about.
It's in the RFP.
It's in the RFP, which is made part of the contract. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Could you please read the motion?
Motion made by Bill Mudge to defer the ELERT contract for a couple of weeks, and it was seconded by Joe Thompson.
Can we give that a date like March 28th, which is the next meeting?
That's fine, yes?
Would you please put that in the motion?
Motion to defer the ELERT contract till March 28th.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Opposed,
Nay.
nay. Could I have a roll call vote, please?
Linda Avanzado.
No?
Mel Boyd Benson.
Yes, March 28th.
Larry Cerisi. He's not here. William Mudge.
Yes.
Kimberly Page.
No.
Joe Thompson.
Yes.
Richard Welch.
No. So it's tied?
3-3. It's tied.
So the motion fails. Okay, Kim, would you, Mrs. Page, would you
Parliamentary
make your...
question. Point of order.
Yes, Mrs. Benson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a parliamentary question. When there's a 3-3 vote, and the chairman has voted, and his number has been counted, I thought he was used to break a tie. Am I correct?
No, you're not. In some rules, under some rules that certain organizations follow, that's the case. But I've never seen that as the case in a school committee, any school committee.
Okay. Mrs. Page?
Well, I make a motion that we pass the ELERT contract.
Second?
Any discussion on Mrs. Page's motion to pass the ELERT contract? Mrs. Page?
Yeah, I would, I know that we've just gone through a motion to delay, and I guess I would say, even though we are not going to delay it, that we're going to take the vote tonight, I would urge people not to then not vote for this contract because we wanted to delay, because there was a delay wanted by 3 people, and that this is something that we need to move forward on in our consolidation with the town, that we need to make sure that we get an assessment done, and as to a certain extent, while there's this overlap that's a little bit awkward between the pass down that we're having between what Mr. Mudge has not gotten and the information he has gotten. It's still the sort of thing we've got to trust each other that the RFP was done correctly when we did this in the, because we all saw the RFP a couple of months ago. Or I should say, the people who were on the committee saw the RFP when we were on it months ago. And at that time, we all felt pretty good that everything was covered. And so I would say I would trust the judgment of the entire consolidation committee, because it's not just Dick Welch. It was the entire committee who put that together, who I feel comfortable enough to say, I'm sure that they made sure everything was covered. And so that is why, if we're going to move forward with this, we need to make sure that we support the town in getting this moved forward.
Mrs. Avanzado?
I was just going to say a lot of time and effort has gone into this, and I do understand committee members' desire to practice oversight the way they should. I don't think voting on this contract prevents them from getting their questions answered, but I just don't think going back because they weren't on the committee when all the work got done and delaying something that we need to get moving on is the answer. So,
Well,
Excuse me, Mr. Mudge. Time and time again, this committee, more than the town council, has been reproached from the floor for the lack of positive movement on consolidation for this town. Both the town council and the school committee and the attorneys have all reviewed this. It's time to move forward. to get off the dime. Now, this should have been done and finished by December. We need to get this done for the sake of moving forward. Mr. Mudge.
Well, again, I don't think there's a real issue with waiting a couple of weeks, but in fact, I don't want to put a contract out that I'm not comfortable with in terms of what our commitments are. We already know it went from $20,000 to $40,000. Mr. Thompson has some issues in here that he wants to make sure are in there. And so, again, I don't think there's a huge impact to delay this for a couple of weeks.
Are there any more comments? Mr. Thompson?
I've been told ever since I was on the committee, and this was one of the first votes that I had to make, that everything has been a rush, that we're late, we've got to get going, and I've passed some things which, now that I know more about what I'm doing on the committee, I'm sorry I did, and I don't want this to be one of them. I don't think it's going to hurt us one bit to wait for 2 more weeks in order to say yes on this. And by the way, I'm very much in favor of consolidation. I'm very much in favor of this particular idea. I just want to make sure for myself that it's going to have everything in it that we want, so that when this company comes back and hands us the package, takes their $40,000 and goes home, that we have what we need in order to immediately be up to speed with this consolidation. And I don't have that assurance right now. In 2 weeks, I'll be happy with that.
Is there any more discussion? Mrs. Benson?
My question is directed to you. As the chairman, these 2 members seem to have questions, and I want you to reinstate what you said, that the council approved it last evening.
Council approved this contract at their last meeting.
When was that last meeting?
Last Monday night.
If they did it without changes, that's what we see.
There was no changes to it. They approved it.
They approved it.
Yes.
And they are complaining about changes, for a better word, not complaining, but changes after the council approved it, and you were going to bring it to the body. Did you distribute it among the members?
The contract, the package that's on the agenda is what was approved by the town council.
Yes.
I'm asking, as knowing that it was approved by the town council, and the next move was for the school committee to approve it. Did you send the approved, or did you get out any communications to the approved package? That's not hard to figure out.
No, I
understand.
didn't, but I will tell you that it was in the newspaper.
Well, are we as members to rely on the newspaper or rely on official information?
Motion to call the question.
I'm not finished
Motion to
yet.
call the question.
I want to make sure that Mrs. Benson's question is answered. So, Mrs. Benson, you're asking if,
I'm asking the president. He gave me the answer. It was in the newspaper. My question is, do we rely on the newspaper or official information from the president of the school committee?
so I think what Mrs. Benson is saying
He
is,
understands what I'm saying.
do we get in our packets the final version of the contract?
Yes.
And this,
So it sounds like, Mel, that, yes, we did get the final version in what was sent out to you and what we received electronically, both of them. We got the final version that the town council approved. So we have the same thing. So what you received was the same thing that the town council received and approved.
Okay, and he said at their last meeting, and that was last evening.
No, it was a week ago. It was
A week ago Monday.
They approved it a week ago?
Yes.
Okay.
And it was in last Thursday's newspaper. Yes.
I don't rely on the newspaper.
I understand that. I just want you to...
Because if I did, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Okay, we've had
Mr. Chairman?
call the question.
Mr. Chairman?
Wait, excuse me. There's a motion on the table to call the question.
What did you say?
Made a motion to call the question.
So, do we need to take a vote on call the question?
Yes.
Is there a
If the
second on
members
call
have
the
something
question?
else to say, I think we should take a vote on it.
Mr. Mudge,
Yes?
did Did you have a question, sir?
Yes, sir. Okay, yeah. My point is, there were changes made since we even sat on this committee, okay? Were made by the school committee lawyer and other people with regards to this. I provided some inputs, and I'm not sure they were in there or not in there, and was not consulted. So I don't feel comfortable that I know, okay, and I am convinced that this contract being issued is in the best interest right now of the community. Okay, and I would just like to validate that, that's all. And
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of...
Motion, please?
Would the clerk please read the motion?
Who was the second on that? It was Linda Avanzato and
Well, the motion was made by Mrs. Page.
seconded by Linda Avanzato. The motion was to call the question.
No,
Oh, the original
the
motion.
original motion.
Okay.
The original motion made by Kim Page to pass the ELERT contract, seconded by Linda Avanzato.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Have a roll call vote, please.
Mel Boyd Benson.
Abstain, lack of information.
William Mudge.
Mr. Mudge? Mr. Mudge?
No.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Joe Thompson.
No.
Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Linda Avanzato.
Yes?
Okay, I'll take
Vote passes 3-2.
Vote passes 3-1.
Thank you.
Excuse me?
Excuse me.
I think it was 2 noes, wasn't it? I'm sorry.
3-2 and 1 abstention.
I would
Mrs.
like
Benson abstained.
Okay, I've often said in public that I don't like people who abstain. They have to stand for something or die for nothing. So, no.
Are you changing your vote to no?
Yes.
You're changing it to yes.
No, N-O.
Okay. Okay, 3-3. Motion passes 3-3.
No, didn't pass.
Yes.
I really can't that.
Fails.
Failed.
Oh, I'm sorry, motion fails, 3-3.
Mrs. Page?
I would ask that we put this on the March 28th agenda.
I second that.
I second it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Mr. Chairman,
Carol.
may I recommend that everyone get a copy of the proposal for services dated October 18th, which is an attachment to this contract, as well as the RFP. I think if Mr. Thompson and Mr. Mudge were to read the attachment and the RFP, their questions would be answered, because what I heard Mr. Thompson ask for was in the attachment, which Mr. Riley and I reviewed, as well as it was in the RFP. So if they could get those documents by the 28th, they should have all of their questions answered.
Thank you.
Do we have a consensus to have it put on the March 28th agenda? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Mr. Thompson?
I'd just like to thank you for that comment, and I would appreciate if I could get it in writing. I've been told, I came in with a agenda tonight that I had just printed off of my electronic machine at home, and I get into the meeting and I find that it's all been changed. So I want to make sure that I have something on paper that is the final version, that is the official final version that will not be changed, that we'll be voting on.
I can assure you, this is the version that Mr. Riley and we did revise it several times when we went back and forth, and this is the version that was approved by the town council at its last meeting. But I can send you, with the permission of the chair, I can send out the version, I can send out the RFP that was originally voted on and accepted, and I can send you out the attachment, and I believe those would certainly answer the questions.
Thank you.
When you say original, you're talking, what I'm looking from you is the final version.
Right.
The final, which will not be changed.
Right. This is the version, the final version, but you need to see the backup that went into this, and then your questions will be answered.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that information can be forwarded by the clerk. This is
Does she have it, Mr. Welch?
Okay. The next item is the DMS roof specifications. Was that exempted by anyone?
All of E was.
All of E was?
Are we going to
Mr. Chairman?
go by the paper, or are we going to hold up the meeting with these people playing with these toys?
Mr. Mouch?
This is a contract award.
For the roof at Davisville.
It's just for the specifications on the replacement of the roof at Davisville Middle School.
Okay, thank you. I'll make a motion, we accept that.
Second, so we can move on.
I need some clarification from Dr. Thornton.
it out.
All right.
Where are you? Where are you?
This is, okay. Okay, so net anyway, right? This is a good thing?
Ignore that, it's broken out.
All right.
Get the exit out, whatever.
You think
Okay. Mr. Mudge, you were on the DMS roof. This is going to need to be tabled, and I'd ask Mr. Draper. I'd ask Mr. Draper to please give an explanation on this item.
On March 3rd, we, myself, went up to the base to inspect all flashing connections. Our findings at that time were that the east side of the building, that roof is board, and 4 to 5 years, like that basement. We found the heating system, the cafeteria roof, the roof area, were all found in that decent condition relative to the age. We thought based on the cafeteria snow, our findings indicated that we had some storage penetration, some icy snow got up on the flashing, but it did not appear that we had a lot of snow. We'll do a revised this time we'll come to the decision years to be taxed and take advantage of the price of that way. And also we need time to accept passage to our
So, because of that, we really need to table this for tonight's meeting. Sure, go ahead.
I think this committee is probably not an issue necessarily break the bond either. No, if we don't get the bond, we may have to go to that council for additional funds. Obviously, the life cycle of the roof is more than that. And if that continues,
So, yeah, yeah, we don't need an action on it, I don't believe. We don't need a vote on that, Mrs. Carroll? No, no. Okay. So we'll move on. The NK High School septic system. Is there any discussion on that? Mr. Thompson?
Is this a competitive bid?
Again, I'll defer to Mr. Draper on this.
Yes, this is, we engaged the system with the USDA through the master price agreement. We asked them to develop a proposal that would address some repairs that are required at the high school septic system. Also some other information, some other items that have them take a look at. This would be to enter a contract with them to do this work, put together a bid spec, and then we publicly advertise that work.
Mr. Mudge?
Specifically, we have two systems, as I understand it. One is the system for the place area. We also have one here sitting outside this building for the cafeteria. Empty every whatever. So what is the problem? And we bought a septic system that cost about $1 million. $1 million. And I'm just amazed that we have to, all of a sudden, when 8 or 9 years, pay the gas.
Mr. Mudge? I can address that for you. There's two holding tanks, okay? The one that's outside here is for janitorial. There's a holding tank for the labs, for the science labs, okay? And that's all they are. They're holding tanks. They don't leach, okay? Primarily, that's what most of this is about, is to churn them into tanks. You're shaking your head.
This one, we have two with GZA. This is the one for maintenance of the
That's the media one? Oh, okay, all right. Okay. In that system, there is media in there that helps to, I guess, digest the solids, et cetera. And that's kind of a, from what I understand, it's a maintenance item more than a repair.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think, though, we spend like $60,000 a year for that service.
Actually, we say we're down to $25,000 or $26,000 by contract, yeah.
So isn't that done on an annual basis? Why would we need to be?
Well, you have a maintenance agreement that they work on it once a month, isn't it? Yeah. And then they go from, and that's just a maintenance and making sure everything is operating correctly. All right, that doesn't mean that if you need to replace certain things, that's covered in that. GZA was the engineering firm, is that not correct, Mr. Draper? So what they found out was that there was some issues that they needed to straighten out, and one of them is the replacement of the media. Now, the people who are doing the maintenance contract wanted to do it, and I said, it's not part of their contract. We need to put it out for bid and get the best bid that we can. So that if they come in to be the less expensive, fine. If they don't, then it'll go out to somebody else.
Fine. I was under the impression, the way it was mentioned, we were going to do a design analysis on a modification to the current system. And
But to take it a step further, what I started to tell you about is the two holding tanks we've had looked at, and Mr. Draper, you correct me if I'm incorrect, by churning them, and there's also a situation at the stadium where there's a holding tank that has never been pumped since the stadium was built, okay, that we looked into that, and to correct the system, the holding tanks, and turn them into normal septic drain fields, will pay for themselves in about 2.5 years. And then we won't be pumping them. Because there's no solids. And one of the reasons that, like, the janitorial was on a holding tank was because of the solvents or cleaning fluids that they were using were toxic.
Right.
Since a year ago, July, the system no longer uses toxic cleaners or materials. We're now green, if you will. So the stuff that would be going into the groundwater is not toxic.
Okay, so what we're saying is basically the uses has changed, now we can go into the major system, and we'll have to do whatever.
Well, it
we
won't
have
go
to
into the
do.
major system. They'll create a drain field for those tanks.
Okay.
But the idea is we won't be pumping as often as we had been. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Page.
I'd make a motion that we approve item E5.
I second it.
Any more discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The next item is the Noresco situation. We have a letter in correspondence, I think, that you all should have received. If I could ask Mr. Burson just to come forward, please.
I make a motion, we
Okay, I asked Mr. Burson to show up, as he wrote the letter that is included in your correspondence for tonight. He's a member of the Facilities Committee, and he has just a couple of comments that I would like him to make for the benefit of the public. Mr. Burson.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Just a couple of real short pieces I want to share with you. One is that you should be very proud of the buildings and the way they're being managed. These buildings are basically all Energy Star rated, and they are in the higher percentile of Energy Star rated. And that's when they look at the buildings from a 1990 or 2000 or 2005 perspective. When you think about some of the age of some of these buildings and how tight they are from an energy perspective, you know, the maintenance staff and Ned and the crew here have done an amazing job and really deserve credit. At the same time, the utility usage here is remarkable in how little is used. And the committee has been incredibly impressed by Principal Merkel, Terry Merkel, who is sort of your energy czar. And he has paid his salary and many costs above and beyond in the savings that he's generated through his efforts to basically manage the boilers pretty much manually himself in a number of the buildings. And those kids are not any warmer than they need to be for any length of time they have to be. A couple little tidbits about this as well. Right now, the school system is using about right now over the course of the 15 years where some of this work will be done, you're going to be using about 29,000 gallons of number 2 fuel oil, the same fuel oil they're talking about at now $106 a barrel. The price, the base price that they're using for savings, Noresco is $1.91. So if you think about the price now, the future use, the future prices, these savings will only multiply. So John Koppinen is here if you have any technical questions, but this is a great deal for the community. Noresco invests the money up front. We reap the savings over a very long length of time, and there's no capital outlay for us at all. So the committee is very impressed with the work that is happening at the school department, with the managing the buildings, and thinks that the work with Noresco will only help to further the energy efficiency and the long-term cost savings of the district while getting a whole lot of capital improvements and no dollar outlay to the district at all.
Thank you, Mr. Burson. Anyone have any questions of Mr. Burson?
Thank you. It's $2.6 million in capital investments that Noresco is making to save the school department money. It's a great deal for taxpayers and the community.
Mr. Thompson.
What, Mr. Burson, what's the, explain to me about the 15 years, because I'm on this board for 4 years, and I'm being asked to vote for something that's going to last 11 years after I've left. So what am I putting on to the future of why 15 years? What happens in 15 years?
Without being sarcastic, Mr. Thompson, it's 11 years of additional thank yous for you and this decision you're making tonight. Because what this is really based on is 15 years of savings in energy costs that will be used to essentially enable Noresco to recoup its investment. If the school committee were to be able to come up with the $2.6 million today, they could do this work themselves and reap the savings over that 15-year period. But that's not likely in this environment, and it's also not an area necessarily of the technical skill of the school department. So what you're basically doing is having an investment angel come in, make the capital investment. You're going to reap those savings over 15 years and longer in many cases, new windows, et cetera, environmental controls on thermostats so that not everybody is flipping their own switch and setting the thermostat to their comfort level, which is different than the person down the hall where you're ultimately creating weather in the building. Between hot and cold, and Noresco is footing the bill. So you're getting 15 years of savings and 15 years of appreciation from the community, in my mind. And not to be flip about it, but you're not paying any money out of pocket here.
I understood that. So why is Noresco being so good to us? I mean, they're going to make the money, and so we're giving up something in the long run, maybe amortized over this 15 years.
I think, and help me out here, Ned and Chairman Welch, if I stumble here, but I think the issue gets back to the capacity to make the initial upfront investment. And yes, Noresco is going to make its money back, but they're the ones fronting the $2.6 million, and they're taking the risk that prices don't plummet and they don't see those savings on the back end. I mean, it's hard to imagine the prices may plummet, but with alternative energy and other kinds of options down the road, we have no idea. So Noresco is taking that risk, and they're making the $2.6 million investment. If the school committee was able to make that similar investment, maybe it'd be wise, but there's no risk here.
I might also add, Mr. Thompson, that the state of Rhode Island has been using this particular company, and down at the University of Rhode Island, I think over the period of some 10, 12 years, they've saved about $18 million for the taxpayers in the state of Rhode Island. There is no bonding required here, so there's no legal fees required. It's really somebody else coming in and making the investment, and for the efficiencies that they can make, that they believe that they can make, they're taking a portion of the savings and the efficiencies to pay off, and that's where they're making their profit. It's really a win for the town. We're making no capital investment. Is there any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Thank you, Mr. Burson.
Is there a motion on the table?
No. I don't know. Bill, did you make a motion?
I'll second that.
Any more discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Unanimous? Okay. Let's see. I'd like to jump to one item just to make sure that we get it in before we have to stop at 9 o'clock, if you don't mind, because it's very important time-wise that we just touch on the item for the renewal of the administration contracts. Dr. Thornton?
Sure. You have on your agenda A through G for the admin contracts. As you know, the contracts are staggered in that some come due in different years. The ones in front of you now come due this year, and the terminal date is March 30 in terms of a school committee action. So I would just open up to any questions you may have.
Mrs. Benson, did you have a question? No. Okay, someone make a motion that we hold this over to the next meeting?
No, I didn't get that motion.
I said would someone.
Why?
This is new business, so
It's
new
only for
business, so we don't-
discussion only?
We only discuss it today, and next time we'll be voting on it.
Gotcha.
I understand that.
And it needs to be finalized by the end of this month, so if we just move it to the next.
Okay, well, that's good. I agree with that, because I did notice that all of them were on there, just a few.
These are all the ones that are up.
Oh, yeah, that was my question.
Mr. Mudge?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have some concerns about some of these contracts today, and first of all, I'm not sure. I looked at some of these contracts and like get an idea of what it's going to cost. I noticed that these are 2-year or 3-year contracts, 3-year contracts?
These are two.
Two. And that the thing that's happening today, I wonder if it's wise to go into more than a 1-year contract, but also I'm going to look hard at in terms of any raises for any administrative people over the next couple of years, given our economic situation. Okay, so I'm just making that statement now, because I'm going to look at that, okay, with us maybe lay off people and delay things, and I think we really have to look at regrettably curtailing our expenditures. But it's just my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mudge. I think during the next 2 weeks, if you have any questions regarding this item before it comes up for a vote, the next meeting on the 28th, that would be good. Okay. So we'll say again. I'm sorry, Mel, go ahead.
I was just going to mention, you mentioned the time at 9 o'clock, that we would go to, we got 2 agendas here.
Right, we got to go to executive session at 9.
I know it, and I would think that we would take care of the item on the agenda concerning the minibus.
That's the next item. I had to make sure this got in for time. Okay. Now we'll go back to, if you don't, let's see, where are we here?
We're on item F. Said we're on item F.
Item F, the bid proposals for minibuses and custodial services. Any discussion on item F? Mrs. Benson?
I make a motion, and I think I did 2 meetings ago, that we would study this, and that the minibuses would stay status quo for this year. But I'll make it much clearer. I'll make a motion. Oh, you get my picture?
Ms. Benson, the microphone, please. Thank you.
I would like to make a motion that the item related to minibuses be delayed until we have future studies pertaining to the minibuses, and that we are shown how the savings are generated. So I make a motion that this item be postponed until school year 211 and 212.
That's when it would be. Okay, there's a motion and a second by Mr. Mudge. Mr. Mudge?
Mr. Chairman, I look at it a little bit differently than Mrs. Benson at this time, but I made a recommendation at a prior meeting that we have an in-house review of both custodial as well as all our departments before we go on the street to ensure we know that we are, have a cost-effective staff and we're staffed correctly. For example, with regard to the custodians, there was a study done, and it cost quite a bit of dollars to evaluate what the staffing level at the high school was here. And I just think we shouldn't go out on the street until we look at that and we look at our in-house staffing to see if we are at the most efficient operation. Number two is, in combination with the minibus issue, and I believe it needs to be looked at, that we should also be looking at the general ed transportation, and I would, if I could, or in the next, after this is resolved, is recommend that we retain the services of our former bus transportation supervisor, Dewey Cattell, to come in and do an in-house study for us to see, A, if there are efficiencies that we can glean some savings on the general ed side of the house, as well as on the special ed side of the house. I'm not sure if Mr. Cattell or what that would cost, but I'm sure that I would be more comfortable understanding the parameters of all of the transportation issues with some fresh eyes looking at that, and then if based on his evaluation and assessment, which we know is extremely an expert, that then we can take the next step. I would also like to note that, the State Department of Education has found the wisdom that, they should be able to run the transportation, for the entire state. And there's some legislation and other legislation has been put in that other districts want the state to pick up the cost of transportation for everyone. Well, I'm not sure that our particular district, I think we're exempt with that. But nonetheless, every time I see something, and it is another issue that I won't talk about, that comes out of another district in the city or someplace else that wants the state to pick up something, it means that North Kingstown is going to pay more in the long run. And we need to really look at these issues to ensure that they are fair and equitable to everyone. Transportation is one of them. And I don't think if we join a transportation program that's being developed or managed by the state of Rhode Island and the Department of Education, that's going to be at all beneficial for North Kingstown or the North Kingstown taxpayers. So I would suggest that we put this off until this following year, and ask Mr. Cattell, either through some competitive grant or working for somebody, to come in and at least study the minibus and the special ed minibus, as well as the general transportation. And I would respectfully say that I will vote against the custodial contract going out at this time. Thank you.
Mr. Thompson.
As I understand it, we're being asked to vote on both the minibuses, custodial services, simply to go out with an RFP.
That's correct.
We're not going to.
Not voting on
we're not
anything.
voting on anything else. The point that I want to make is that it seems to me that if we do go out for an RFP and receive responses from the commercial establishments, they're going to, in a way, they're going to be showing us what are the best ways to organize ourselves, because we'll perhaps see that they're offering us a lower price to do something that we're doing because they're going to do it better. So that's one way, I believe, that's one of the reasons for an RFP, is to just go out and find out what your optimum managerial process should be in running these affairs. However, I was disappointed when I looked through, and again, it may be my problem with your electronic media, but I was not able to find in either one of these RFPs statements that we've asked for on about 5 occasions. We have asked if they go out with an RFP, we would like specifically to have wording in the RFP for people who are currently working in the system to be considered for the first slots in any new system that was to come about. And particularly under the janitorial, I made a comment that if there are any married couples, people working, who live together, in other words, we employ 2 people from the same household, that special attention should be paid. Each time that was mentioned by myself and Mrs. Benson, everyone at the table kept nodding and saying yes and writing things down, and I, again, was not able to find this. Now, maybe it's there, but I was not able to find it. So until I can be assured of that protection for our people, I'm going to vote no on this at this time.
Mr. Draper, do you have any comments on the RFP?
Yes, it was my understanding we were to provide the draft, take commentary from the committee this evening upon authorization, and then we would include that language and run it by our legal just to make sure that we didn't make any complications to it. But that was my understanding of what we were delivering to the committee.
Mrs. Benson?
Maybe you didn't understand the motion, fellow board members, but my motion was to delay the whole situation of the minibuses, and I didn't specifically say janitorial service, but that will be included, and it was to delay it for until after the 211, 212. And I made the motion, and it was properly second. So I'm going to call the question, and then I'll ask you, Mr. Mudge, would you like to incorporate some of your ideas into an amendment of the motion? Sure. But we still have a motion on the floor that we are going to delay the incorporation of anything related with, not anything related with it, but to the urgency of the RFP for the minibuses. That was my motion. Could the clerk read that back?
Sure. Motion to delay item related to minibuses until we have future studies that show how savings are generated, postponed to the year 2011-2012. Seconded by Bill Mudge.
Mrs. Page?
Oh, I'm sorry.
She got the motions together.
I'm not going to vote for that motion because I would like to be able to find out what are some other alternatives. I don't know whether I would vote for another alternative because I like the system that we have now and I like the people we have here. So I would vote against Mrs. Benson's motion, but I would not vote for the RFP is here unless we incorporate some of Mr. Thompson's language.
Mr. Chairman?
Dr. Thornton?
To Mr. Thompson's point, we can certainly incorporate those and bring this back to you on March 28th to have you look at those with the language in there, Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Mudge?
Thank you. Well, as a side issue, I did look at the custodial services contract, and I really had problems with the way it was written. The first thing that I was flabbergasted was to open up the contract and it says, well, we have 28 or 20 or whatever the number is people doing our janitorial services. That's not a way to put out an RFP. You don't tell the people how many people you have working for you. What you do is you specify the square footage you want cleaned or washed and so forth and so on, you know, and I think that that should be excluded. Any reference to the labor that we spend today should be excluded from that contract if it should go out. I support Mrs. Benson's motion to postpone this thing for a year, and I will make a motion after this is addressed that we come back and work on a plan to study this and like for Mr. Cattell or something else as a secondary action we agree to take in preparation of doing the next step in the future. Thank you.
Before we vote, I just wanted to say that the purpose of the RFP is to gain a value in the marketplace for the services provided under both items. It is not to put people out of work. It is not to do anything other than make sure that we know the value of the services that we're receiving and go on from there. Not until we get that information back will we be able to look at anything as it relates to whether or not we're going to stay or go or not go, sit down and negotiate with the folks that are in the union. It's premature to judge the outcome of this until the information comes back. And so therefore, I would say I will not be voting on your motion either.
Didn't expect it, but I have a question for you.
Yes, Mrs. Benson.
How are you going to determine the value of these employees? Have we set up a criteria that 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, or so forth?
After the RFP has gone out and the bids have come in, then we will all be able to look at that and judge the value of the services that we currently receive and the employees and what we like about it and make a value judgment based on it. Until you get that information, you have nothing to judge against or with.
I have a question. I guess that would come under the Dr. Mr. Draper. Do you do an evaluation of that department and the department head, Mr. whatever his name is, Transportation Director? Do you evaluate those people?
Janitors are evaluated.
I meant transportation. That's the first part of it.
So you're asking are bus drivers and paraprofessionals evaluated?
Yes, that's the question. Mm-hmm. And does the supervisor evaluate them and give you a report?
Mr. Draper?
So, Mr. Welch, how are you going to measure the output and they've never had an evaluation?
That information, we will sit and
oh, yeah.
Excuse me?
Excuse me, finish.
As a committee, we will review the RFP, the results of it, and what we know about our bus transportation and our custodial services. Mr. Mudge.
Mr. Chairman, I basically don't agree ultimately with what you want to get to, but I believe we need to know the scope of work we're dealing with, and I don't feel that we truly know the scope of work, okay, that has to be done, nor do I think it's really articulated that well in the contract that I saw. And until we do that, okay, we shouldn't put especially like a janitorial contract out, because I've seen these things before.
There's no contract being put out,
I know,
Mr.
but it's an
Mudge.
RFP, okay, that says, well, I can do something, but it's meaningless to me because you don't really know the scope of work that's being accomplished. And we can't measure that against our staff because we haven't. Are we mopping the floor 5 times a week, 6 times a week? How many times are we cleaning the heads? How many times are we doing this and so forth? So we need to get that contract so that we know what that is, okay? And that's all I'm saying. And so in the end, I don't disagree with what you're saying. And again, in terms of minibuses and the general ed buses, I think we stand to gain a lot of knowledge by having Mr. Cattell come in and work with us to better understand all these things in preparation if you wanted to do something else.
Mr. Thompson.
I get the impression that, well, here's how I feel. I don't think that we should put this off for a whole year. I think that the townspeople are looking for us to do something in this regard. But at the same time, I'm not ready to vote yes tonight. So I would like to say that what I'm willing to do is to vote no to Mrs. Benson's proposal to put things off for a whole year, but at the same time, immediately to come up with and say, let's look at it again on the 28th. Okay. And I do not want to put it off for a whole year.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of Mrs. Benson's motion, would you please read the motion?
Motion to delay the item related to minibuses until we have future studies that show how savings are generated, postponed to the year 2011-2012. Made by Mel Benson, seconded by Bill Mudge.
Okay. All those in favor of Mrs. Benson's motion, please say aye.
Roll call vote.
Sure. A roll call
Stand
vote,
up and be
please.
counted.
William Mudge.
What it was, Chairman, I want to make sure I understand voting on here.
You're voting on the motion that you seconded, Mr.
Yes,
Mudge.
I understand. My question is, Mrs. Benson can bring this motion up again at the 28th meeting, okay? So I'm going to vote, even though I supported you, Mrs. Benson, I'm going to vote against the motion with the idea that we're going to have a thorough discussion of this after some other reviews at the 28th. And in terms of how what we implement, as opposed to not going forward with this, even though I support that, I will vote against that, okay, with the understanding that I can vote for it at the 28th meeting.
So to clarify, you are voting no on the motion? Yes. Thank you.
Kimberly Page.
No.
Joe Thompson.
No.
Richard Welsh.
No.
Linda Avanzado. Oh, did you leave? Okay. Mel Benson.
Yes.
The motion fails.
Motion fails 4-1.
Okay. Now, Mr. Thompson, would you make a motion, please?
I move that we take up this entire issue on the March 28th meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
What entire issue?
The same issue, we're just not going to deal with it tonight. Minibus and janitorial.
Separate items?
I'm trying to...
They would still be separate items.
All right.
Separate items.
Okay. So we have a motion, and do we have a second?
I second it.
Mrs. Page seconded. Any discussion? All those... Roll call vote, please.
William Mudge.
Yes.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Joe Thompson.
Yes.
Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Melvoyd Benson.
Yes.
Thank you. It passes unanimously. Just a second. I would ask that members that have questions about the RFP, its lack of completeness, etc., that they please have their questions answered prior to the March 28th meeting, please, so that we can get right to the question at hand. Thank you. Mrs. Page.
I'd make a motion that we approve item G on the consent agenda. The approval of legal action.
Is there a second on that, please? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Yes, Mrs. Page.
I'd make a motion that we pass item H, again, on legal action.
Is there a second? Why did you skip G? Is there any discussion on that?
We just did G.
Oh, all right, yep. Okay.
This is the petition the Board of Regents to change the district school boundaries for our VOTEC program. Right.
Mr. Thompson?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Bill Mudge seconded that.
I'm sorry.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Mudge?
Yeah, I want to make sure if I understand this issue, page
I think, and you have to correct me if I'm wrong, but basically, yes. I mean, it's the sort of thing of the advantage of having our students have the opportunity. They would still have the opportunity to go to Coventry, but they would also have the opportunity if they wanted to go to Newport. Newport is closer, and Newport has a half-day program. So the thing that is very nice about that is our students could get an NK diploma, and at the same time, and go here with their classes, they'd be able to stay part of our sports program, our activities, but yet they would still get the vocational training at Newport that they desire. Right now, we have 8 students who are there right now, who are seniors this year who are completing that program. So it is the sort of thing of, I think this would be a very good opportunity. And it still would not, with this, they would not be, you could still have students who, if they wanted to go to Coventry, could.
Mrs. Benson?
One thing you didn't mention, Mrs. Page, I think that this will go a long way. And Dr. Thondon mentioned it, that they have a choice. And it's nice to be able to have a choice in life. So I go along with that.
Mr. Mudge? Dr. Thornton?
The genesis for this has been the very low number of students going to Coventry. If memory serves, we have approximately 4 right now. We started this conversation 2 years ago, and we first sent our first 8 kids to the Newport Center, which is, I believe, 10 miles away, by the way. It's much closer than Coventry in terms of gas mileage. If this was successful, I truly believe you'd see more and more kids want to go vocational at Newport because of the opportunities they have in the room they have. I think you would see even less at Coventry.
What would we say if we said that all kids had to go to Newport?
This isn't about savings. This is not about money. This is about student opportunity for vocational education.
The opportunities they can get for the same opportunity for all business at Newport, there are a finding that it isn't about money, it's about the transportation costs.
We run a bus to Coventry regardless of how many kids we have. We run a bus or share with other towns. What I'm saying is Coventry has a strict interpretation of you must be a Coventry student, you must go the full day, you no longer are an NK student. With the Newport model we were looking at 2 years ago, we actually had kids do English and math in the morning, let's say, and then go to Coventry for, say, cosmetology in the afternoon, and they kept their NK status. And in terms of cost, the bus of 10 miles over the bridge was not a large number. If I could finish, in terms of the opportunity, we have long, I think, bemoaned the lack of vocational opportunity for our kids or access. Kids aren't accessing the program in Coventry. Why? Because they just don't like it. So we're trying to give kids choices.
I really understand, I appreciate that, and I understand it. My point is, if we can take the same courses at Newport as Coventry, then all our kids should go to Newport. We shouldn't have to send a bus for 1 or 2 kids to Coventry.
Right.
And
Right. And oftentimes, too, we try to do is if we have 1 or 2 kids, and we may share services and have them go down to like Narragansett down on Post Road and hook up with them to go to Coventry. We do share services in those cases.
Okay, can we please vote on this item? We have a second, a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes unanimously. I need to go down to the administrative team for the school committee to represent, who's going to represent the school committee on the ESP negotiating team.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Is that number 9 on my old agenda, approval of administrative team
Yes.
and school committee
Yes.
attorney as ESP? I've been asked to be on one of those committees, and one of the names was given was our current lawyer of the school committee, and it's come to my attention that we have been remiss in, when we started out in December, of having a adjustment of the lawyer situation. So I'd like to move that the school committee go out with an RFP for official legal representation. That's my motion.
That's not on the agenda.
Thank you.
It's not on the agenda.
Yeah, I believe that's item C, under new business.
Under new business?
He jumped to new business.
All right, well, but we're on the item which is either K or 9, and that's the one that we're discussing right now.
Right, but as I said, I have been asked to be on a committee to negotiate, and I do not want to go on a committee with a lawyer who has not been approved officially by the new school committee, which should have been done back in December. It's now March, and so my motion, has it been seconded?
I don't know.
Bill? All right, there's a motion and it's been seconded. Thank you. Lorraine, did you get the motion?
Yep, the motion was that the school committee go out for an RFP for official legal representation, seconded by Bill Marsh.
Out of order, I think.
It is out of order.
I don't have any problems in jumping if we want to make a motion to jump to C, but remember, C is new business, so we can talk about it, but we can't make a motion tonight. And so then we can officially then move it to old business next time. So,
Well, if you want to put this off, it's fine, but all I can say to you is that I don't think we should be going out and starting negotiations unless we have an official legal representation. And so the more you put it off, the longer it's going to take you to get your negotiating teams together.
Dr. Thornton?
So if I could just carry this out for us, just think out loud. Hypothetically then, if you were to put this to old business, wait 2 weeks, go out for an RFP, we're not negotiating until the end of spring now. Just so you know, if we do this process, we will not start for some time.
well, why don't we follow the motion on the table first?
Which motion might that be?
It was to jump down to new business, item C.
No, the motion was to move the school committee go out with an RFP for official legal representation. That's, the motion has been seconded.
I thought,
Chair is saying we can't address that under K, but we can address it, which is David saying under
Might I say something to you then? Approving a committee to represent the school committee in the ESP is not for the personality, it's for the position. In essence, whoever is the attorney, whoever is the superintendent, whoever is the business director, not the name, but the position, to represent the school committee on the ESP contract negotiations. What you're doing by not doing that is you're holding up going forward and having the contract negotiations with the ESP folks. Their contract runs out June 30th. So what I would suggest is, okay, because legal counsel representation is under new business and for discussion only, you can go ahead and discuss it. And then on March 28th, you can do whatever you want. But in the meantime, we need to set up who is going to represent the school committee in the negotiations. Mr. Mudge.
okay, I will make a motion with regards to item K, that in fact the school committee attorney and the administration does not represent the school committee negotiations, and the school committee itself form a subcommittee to negotiate the contract.
Is there a second on that?
Wait a minute. What about the motion that's already there? We seem to be,
Which motion are you referring to?
read the last motion.
Motion was made by Joe Thompson that the school committee go out for an RFP for official legal representation, seconded by Bill Mudge.
It's not on the agenda.
You have, we've had it on the agenda for 3 weeks, Mr. Welch, and it was on the agenda, and we never got to the agenda.
I can't help that. Some people
Because-
have an awful lot to say, Mrs. Benson.
That's what we elected for, Mr. Welch. They don't go and elect you if you don't open your mouth. but
Mr.
they
Welch, may I?
Yes.
It's on the agenda under new business. What you can do is you can make a motion to move it to old business so that at the next meeting you can make a motion to go out to bid, to go out to an RFP. So the way it's worded on tonight's agenda, the same way you did it with administrative contracts, what you need to do is to make a motion to move it to old business. Then next meeting, which is, I believe, March 28th, you can make your motion to go out to an RFP.
Is that your advice?
Yes.
I still recognize you as the attorney, and
Thank
I
you.
haven't, yes. And I haven't,
It wasn't even before us. It was-
What you talked about,
But
Mr. Thompson's asking me a question, and his question was, what did we vote to that wasn't on the agenda? And what he's talking about is the administrative contracts. We didn't vote on the administrative contracts. All we did was we voted to take them from the new business where they are now onto the old business or unfinished for next week. We did the same thing, well, we didn't do the same thing, but we voted also then to take the, what else did, the bid proposals and move them to next week. And so there's other things that we've moved to next week.
If you're willing to wait another 2 weeks, and for me to make the same motion 2 weeks from now, and then put up with the delays incumbent upon that.
And let me also, you can move legal representation, then at the next meeting, you can go, it'll be an unfinished business, you can make your motion to go to an RFP. In the meantime, however, you absolutely need to put a committee together. So my advice is, you can approve the committee tonight, and whoever the school committee attorney is after the RFP would simply replace me, who is your present attorney. So it's not like you're appointing me forever, because you're not appointing me by name, you're just appointing school committee attorney. Whoever the school committee attorney is will put into that spot.
I think she was named by name.
Let's deal with, right now, with the legal representation. That needs to go from new business to old business. So you need to withdraw the motion that's on the table and then make that motion.
what is the motion on the table?
Or you withdraw the second.
Could the clerk read the motion on the table? We got too many lawyers up here.
Withdraw the motion and
I don't
then
know
what?
with what she said.
You just need to withdraw the motion that's on the table.
And then what? Then
I'll give you the next step then.
That's the problem.
trust me.
That's the problem. Could you read the motion?
Oh, I've heard that.
Do you want, Joe Thompson, motion that school committee goes out for an RFP for official legal representation, seconded by Bill Mudge.
Okay. Now, we heard comments from the attorney, and we heard comments from the attorney member. So what are you saying, and what is your recommendation? The motion has been made and second.
Are you addressing me, Mrs.?
I'm talking to Mrs. Page now.
Well, since we can't make the motion that Joe has made under new business, because we never make motions under new business.
That's true.
So you withdraw that motion, and then you merely say, we want to move the legal counsel representation to old or unfinished business for the March 28th meeting.
With the make of the motion, withdraw that.
Yes, or the second.
I think I made the motion under approval
It
of
doesn't
administrative team
matter.
and school committee
You
attorney.
didn't allow that to go through. You didn't accept that. That's why this is so, Joe, what I'll do, I think, is let's clear the record, we'll start again.
Yep.
Okay, I will withdraw the second.
Yep.
Which means your motion
Fails. Yep.
failed, and Mr. Page will provide us.
I'll make the motion.
gonna
If
tell
you've
us something.
withdrawn the second, then I'll make a motion that we move legal counsel representation from new business to unfinished business for the March 28th meeting.
I can wait till March 28th. Have a second.
Second that motion.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
I'd like to talk about item L.
May-
Okay, we'll talk about K. I would make a motion that we approve the following people for the ESP negotiation team, and that would be Dr. Philip Thornton, Mr. Ned Draper, Mrs. Deborah Gardner, and the school committee attorney.
Second. Any discussion?
The advantage I see of that right now is that this whole issue that we're having on who will be the school committee attorney, if it's the same person or not, will be kind of a moot question, because whoever is will be the person who negotiates for us. But it puts together the team that, those three people are essential to be there.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Mudge?
I'm not going to support that particular motion because, first, I think that the administration, and I've said this before to Dr. Thornton, it should not be put in a position of negotiating the contract with the employees. I feel it is the school committee's responsibility to do that, and the school committee should take the lead. With support from Dr. Thornton and his staff and the legal staff, if necessary, or arbitrate it if necessary. But I believe that the school committee should form a one- or two-person, three-person subcommittee to negotiate the contract, which has happened in the past. And I don't know how we drifted away from it, but I think that we need to stay on top of this, okay, and do the negotiations and with the support of the administration. So that's my view. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mrs. Benson?
I agree that the negotiation should not entirely be left with the administration. And I will give you good reasons as to why. The administration will have to bring it back to the body for us to approve it. And with no one from the school committee sitting on the negotiation team, you'd have to go over the same process again. That same process would have to be gone over again. So I think you'll have conflicting roles there, because according to state law, do you have any information to get me on the right track, you and Dr. Thun?
To that question, I have a response. Where I used to work, that same sentiment, I think, was evident. So what they did is they actually had the whole committee meet every time, because the problem was the subcommittee sometimes wasn't sure they represented the whole spirit of the whole committee. So while cumbersome, the admin team was there to support, and the whole school committee met every time. And we can certainly do that. I welcome the whole committee to join me.
Let me finish with Dr. Thun, please, if you don't mind. I can see that, but negotiation is a private thing. You can't negotiate in the public. And sometimes when you have too many people, the World War II slogan, too many lips sink the ship, because some of them are going to be loose. So let's kind of do it not based on what we had somewhere else. I think we negotiated a pretty good contract the last time, and it was negotiated with members of the school committee sitting on there. So my suggestion would be, if the entire administration, the three heads in the administration is going to be there, And I question the qualifications of one to be able to do the negotiation. That I will speak to you about in private. But let's appoint someone from the school committee, one or two, to be on the negotiation team. As of now, how many members do we have?
My motion was for 4.
For 4. Let's make it a different number. Let's go to 6 is not a good number when you're doing things like that. You always try to have an odd number, and 2 and 2 is even number, and you can get hung up. So, am I saying something wrong? Am I not a member of the school committee, Mr. Wells?
I don't understand your question.
Well, if you wasn't carrying on the conversation, you might would understand it.
You know, Mrs. Benson, why don't you just stick to the subject? I was not
I'm
talking to anyone.
sticking to the subject.
No, you're not. Just
Who are
address
you?
the issue, please.
The issue is putting someone else on the negotiation team beside the administration. And if you don't understand that, it's a void there somewhere.
I have a suggestion, Mrs. Benson. If we want to make sure that we have a negotiation team, and especially to get this started, somebody can amend my motion to add the names of school committee members on here. And then that will give us a negotiation team that is not only with administration, but also with school committee members. And if somebody wants to amend my motion, they can do that. And I would say, as much as I regret saying this, that I would be on the team.
Don't say it if you regret it.
I said that I would be willing to be on the team. But I would like to make somebody else to amend my motion with another name.
She's on everything.
Could I make a motion to amend?
Yes, Mr. Mudge.
I would make a motion to add 2 school committee members to the team.
I second that motion.
So you're amending the motion to add 2 school committee members to be named at a later date? Okay.
No.
We can take that on if
He didn't have that in his motion.
I would have motions, let me do the motion to be Mrs. Page as one, and who else is, Ms. Thompson, are you interested in?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
And Mr. Thompson, beyond me, Mr. Page is not beyond the negotiating team.
I second that. I think we have 2 very capable people.
Okay, so the first thing we have to do is take up the vote on the motion, on the amended motion.
Yes.
Is there any more discussion on the amended motion to add 2 school committee members to the 4-member committee of the main motion?
Okay, may I say that
How
motion
can you
is
do
to
that?
add 2 school committee members, Mrs. Page and Mr. Thompson, to the negotiating committee.
Right, which is an amendment to Mrs. Page's motion of 4 members on the committee, which was...
Yes, I'm just specifying the name.
Right,
Instead of
okay,
just the-
all right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? 1. I'm opposed. Okay. So the amendment
Will the
carries.
secretary record those votes so they be reflected in the minutes?
Yes. Have recorded.
Thank you. Now the vote is on the main motion. Is there any more discussion on the main motion?
I move that we move the question on the main motion.
All those in favor of the main motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Carries unanimously.
Did we get a vote of everyone? Did we get a vote? We're switching procedures here.
Did you get a vote?
Yes,
We
we
just
got to vote.
voted.
It was unanimous.
Okay. I didn't hear some people
But the
vote.
problem is, we're now at 20 minutes after 9, and we have to go back into executive session.
I would
The
request that
problem
we
is
number
we've
L.
had too many meetings canceled and too many meetings moved around. And this is a
We're
busy...
going to have to start at 3 o'clock.
No, Mr. Welch. This is the busy season of a school committee, and we've had too many meetings canceled and too many moved around. So,
Some of us have to work for a living.
that I would like to say.
All right. Mrs. Page has the floor.
I would ask that we go to item L, and I would make a motion that we approve the superintendent's recommended salary for the pupil personnel services And I would, I'll wait until I get a second. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. What I would say is that this has been something that was on our agenda about a year ago, and that we had tried to rectify the situation then. At that time, when we had this on our agenda, we were given some data at that time that this person has been in this position for 2-3 years. Mm-hmm. And during that time, we have saved a substantial amount of money, and I don't remember the numbers that were on the sheets last year, but I remember they were over $60,000, and I don't remember if they were higher than that. So the cost-benefit analysis that we're looking at here is we're looking at spending $10,000 to be saving over $60,000, and that wasn't something that we had from prior people who were in this position. And the number keeps on going up for each year that we have them. So I would say that would be why I would suggest that we approve this. Because, again, as we talked about earlier in the evening about energy savings and how much Mr. Merkel has saved us, well, I believe this person has done just as great of a savings, and so for that reason, I would say that we should approve this. And she's done a great job. I don't want to dismiss that it's just purely our money.
Is there any, Mrs. Benson?
I would just like to remind the committee that our current director of elementary and secondary education, Dr. Giss. And I think the last time this came up, we were discussing a few points on qualifications and so forth, and it was brought up that the time spent in the job and the on-the-job training, which is very good. But I hope we don't do things in the framework of longevity and not productivity, because one thing that I'd like to bring to your attention is the mix-up with the gentleman who didn't, who was told he was hired for one thing, and then the superintendent saw it different. And then there are many other things that's transpired during at least the last 2 years. So those are my objections. Yes.
I need him to call on me.
Yes, Dr. Fine.
Just a few points. As you know, we spoke about this back in August, and at that point, before Mr. Thompson's time and Mr. Mudge's time, we had said we would get back to the conversation to close the circle, if you will. That's why we're here tonight. In your packet, or backup, a couple points just to bring out to you. To me, this is really about fair market value in one sense. If you look at your district numbers here in your packet, Westerly, a smaller school district, they're paying more than what I'm recommending. South Kingstown, paying more than what I'm recommending, and they're smaller than we are. They're at 114. Narragansett, a much smaller district, they're paying $115,000. What I'm saying is we're the largest district in South County paying the least for a special ed director, and that's just not okay. I think the qualifications stand for themselves. We have added ALP programs at the elementary, middle, high school. We have brought kids back into district. Things are really humming. And I leave with this one question to you. Think where special ed was 3 or 4 years ago in North Kingstown. I mean, and think where it is today. Things are going infinitely better. What I'm looking for is just a right or wrong. This person was hired before my time at an undervalued number, and I'm trying to fix a wrong. Thank you.
Dr. Fine,
Anyone else?
may I speak again?
Yes, Mrs. Benson.
Everything you said is true, and she has brought our thing up, but we have a large number of cases related to special ed that has to be resolved at the State Department. At the State Department. And we have a lot... Department of Education. I call it the State Department. And we have a large number of things. Now, one thing we need to allay our liability with cases and decisions. And I don't think it's good for a school department to get so many decisions coming down that are different. The woman has done a good job, in a sense. But I get the feeling that she's not really doing what she feels she could do, that it's driven by something else. And that's my main question.
If I could respond, I think when you think back to where special ed was years ago, I think the rep back then was we said yes all the time. We had district placements in Vermont, in New Hampshire. We're now saying no sometimes, and that causes arbitrations, that causes mediation, it causes legal issues, and I applaud that because we're doing the right thing by kids. And I think in the past, that wasn't the case all the time.
Well, I won't agree with you I will agree with you partially. In the past, we wasn't doing the right thing. But I don't think that some of the cases that we are saying no to, that they should be looked into more. And like I said, Ms. Santos doing the job. I feel that she is driven, and I'll just say it, by the administration to turn down some things because they are not the way they are being turned down, they don't come out right. And that's just the way I see it, and I'm looking at it from an education and an educator's standpoint. Yes, you're right. We wasn't that bad before, but we were bad. Because special education used to be looked at, put all the kids in there, Johnny don't sit still, we get more money for him. And I won't deny that to anyone, because I was in the system when that philosophy went on. But sometimes we've had things that I just feel that it's with her professionalism, she was here before, and everything that she's driven. And we have too many cases having to go to be settled by others rather than in-house.
Thank you, Mrs. Benson. Mr. Mudge.
You're welcome, Mr. Welch.
Excuse me. This appears to be like a 10% raise, 11% raise, some $10,000. And, you know, I am concerned that, and, you know, something that's really bothered me, and this has nothing to do with the individual, is that it seems like what we do is we have this rolling ball that keeps going around and around that says somebody else is paid X in another district, therefore, you know, somebody over here has to be paid Y. And this is how we've gone from this ever-evolving rationale that we need to give teachers more money, we need to give these people more money because we did it someplace else. And there is just, to my thinking, we need to stop and take a breath, okay? You know, especially in our hard times, okay, with respect to all, not just this one, but all the contracts, all the administrators' contracts coming up. And it would be unfair to say no to her or yes to her and no to everyone else whose contracts are coming up. So, and there are some other issues that I think that I need to have resolved. I mean, I may or may not know the answers, but so at this point in time, I'm not going to support this at this point in time. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mudge. Are any other discussion?
I have one.
Dr. Thornton?
Just one more perspective for you on this in terms of, you know, the origin of this. When Ms. Santa came here, please think about it in this context. We have 4 central office people, myself, Dr. Roger, Mr. Draper, Ms. Santa. We have 3 males paid at their market value, and we're paying the female under the market value. Think about that.
That it? Okay. Now, I want to make a... Just keep on talking, Mrs. Benson. Are you done? Thank you.
Oh, I don't have the right temperature in here.
I just want to bring to your attention that when we went to the budget, one of the line items in the budget that we took out was the $10,500 that this addresses. So I don't know where you're going to get the money from. That would be number one. Number two, I agree with Mr. Mudge. This is about a 10% raise, and I personally cannot vote on that. It's a wonderful thing to say that the individual is doing a great job. as many of our people do, administrators, staff, et cetera. We have to be cognizant of the economy that we're in. I don't know how you can justify voting a 10% raise in this economy. I'm not against a raise at this point in time. I will not support a 10% raise.
I have one clarification, if I could. On the budget big picture cheat sheet, if you will, it was stricken, but it still resides on page 22. If you don't do this, you save $10,000, just to clarify.
That, in my mind, still doesn't change the fact you're talking about a 10% raise. Is there any more discussion? Okay. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Joe Thompson.
You can just pass.
Come on, Joe. It's taxes.
I'm sorry?
No, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. Sorry. I'm going to say no.
Richard Welsh.
No.
Melvoy Benson.
Got to vote on this.
Get to vote on this one.
Vote on this one and then bring it up.
No.
No.
Said no.
William Mudge.
No.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Okay.
Motion fails 4-1.
Okay. Now, just a moment. You can only vote on the recommendation of the superintendent. You cannot change his recommendation and vote on it.
Right.
Okay, that's fine.
He'll come back.
So I would say at the next meeting, if you want to make another recommendation, Dr. Thornton.
I'm done making that recommendation. I stand by the recommendation.
Thank you, Dr. Thornton.
Em, since you have the last thing, so our sports are coming up.
Sure.
I make a motion that we pass item M, since our sports teams are coming up. This is the personnel actions appointments.
A second motion.
Is there any discussion? No discussion? All those in favor?
Me too.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none? Passes unanimously. We might just as well continue on because it's too late to go into executive session and cover the information in the executive session.
We can still go into executive session. We were only a half an hour off.
Mr. Mudge?
I would like to go to, if we could, to skip the new business for a moment.
Well, we have an item on here. Mr. Draper, the item on the CD boiler. That needs to be taken care of, doesn't it? Yes. Could you please explain that to the committee?
Yes. What occurred was, as is in the packets, on or about mid-February, we had a no heat call at the CD building. Upon inspection, we found that the boiler had failed. That boiler consists of two independent firing units. One of the units is beyond repair. One of the units we were able to get firing. However, at this time of season, with temperatures below freezing, we weren't comfortable that we would have time to go out for a full bid process. That being said, we contacted three vendors we knew to be reputable with good service to the district in the past. They each provided quotes. We took the lowest overall quote and approached the superintendent as an emergency, asked for authorization, now bring it before the committee.
Just a second. The thing I want to also explain to you is that the chairman of facilities, who is an HVAC contractor, and myself looked at this boiler, and it was ascertained that the boiler that's there is not repairable. And the quote that they have is to replace with a like situation that is still considered to be the best option for the district. Okay. It did fail long before it should have, but there's no recourse at this point in time. It's 10 years old. So it should have been 30 or 40 years out. It only lasted 10 years, but, you know, that's a failure of a man-made thing. So, I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson, did you have something to say?
I'd just like to say, I really like this emergency boiler replacement business because I'm looking at the fact that we're going to save, looks like about $5,000 just by going out with competitive bid. And I like that. I'd like to see a lot more of it rather than sole source. So do you need a motion on this, or what are we doing?
Yes.
I move we accept this bid.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. I suppose we should go back up to the beginning.
Mr. Chairman, may I go to new business?
Mr. Welch, are you going back into a yes or no to executive session?
You want to go back in?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, I need a motion.
Excuse me, I made a motion to go to new business.
Is there a second on that?
I'll second it.
Go ahead, Mr. Mudge.
Mr. Chairman, for the next school committee meeting, I would like to place on the agenda the topic of re-election of chairman and school committee chairman and vice chairman pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 16-2-6.
You would need to put that under new business.
I
and-
just...
Right, right. All you're doing is putting it under new business and then,
To put it on the next
And then-
agenda.
right.
Next week's agenda, yes.
right.
For discussion and or action.
Clerk, would you please make sure that's on the agenda? Thank you. Okay, now can I have a motion to go into executive session?
I'll make the motion to go into executive session.
Excuse me, was there a second on that motion? I'm sure that...
Well, it doesn't really
doesn't
need to be an
require it.
emotion because you're asking 2 weeks before.
What?
According to your school department policy, if you request it 2 weeks before the agenda, am I right, Mrs. Page? Your policy says 14 days and it can go
Right.
on. 14 days, so,
I don't have to send anything in. It's a fait accompli.
And I already asked the clerk to please make sure it's on the agenda.
Thank you.
Again,
Whether it was accepted or rejected.
who did you give it to?
I gave it to
I have it.
She signed that she received it.
Oh, okay.
But it was for April, right?
Yes, I
April.
gave it to them.
Okay, the agenda hasn't been made up for April?
Well, I would like to hope that you, Mr. Chairman, will look on the table, or you and Mrs. Page, the people who get out the agenda. And I gave plenty of time.
Good. I have no idea what it is, but I certainly will.
You don't?
I'm not into April, I'm still in March. Mrs. Page,
Well, I will explain to you what it
I
is.
think I just made a motion to go into executive session.
did we get a second?
No.
We have a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, this concludes the public meeting.
We can go in that class.
Yes, sure.
room.
All you hardcore school committee wonks.
No, you know that.